for a major winter storm.
It will be both a mix of some freezing rain and some snow accumulation.
The GTA and much of southern Ontario is expected to be hit with a winter wallop. How much snow is in store and how the city is preparing. Plus,
I think the people know that it is necessary.
Mayor Tory's ambitious new housing plan is moving ahead. Council voting tonight in favor of the proposal that will see sweeping changes to zoning bylaws, including the legalization of rooming houses. And
it's insane to see it start from, a relatively small fire to absolutely engulfing the entire house.
a frightening wake-up call, but thankfully no injuries after a fire rips through a boarded-up house in downtown Toronto. Good evening, I'm Kelda Yoon. Well, it's not officially winter just yet, but it's going to look a lot like it tomorrow. A winter weather travel advisory is in effect for Toronto as a storm is expected to make its way in, bringing a mix of pretty much everything. Let's go to our Dahlia Ashry now, who is live outside. And Dahlia, it's pretty calm right now, but conditions will be changing soon. What can we expect?
That's right, Kelda. I mean, look at me. I'm all bundled up. I got my hat on, so it is chilly, but we got none of that white stuff falling down quite yet. And, so far, so dry and not slippery around me yet. Tomorrow, though, a completely different story. We're going to be expecting a mixture of snow, rain, and strong winds as well.
Let's start this off by breaking the ice and remind you of icy steps and sidewalk. Something to be expected in tomorrow's forecast. Almost everything in the meteorological bag is in store.
It's the freezing rain, of course, with the strong winds that could cause power outages and slippery surfaces.
Winter doesn't officially start until next Wednesday, but we'll get an early glimpse of it tomorrow, which is why the City of Toronto is gearing up tonight.
Depending on the weather this evening, we will begin our liquid brine application, which is a mixture of both salt and water. And we hit the bridges, the expressways, the hills, and high priority intersections.
While the city says it's doing everything it can to prepare, still, a heads up to TTC commuters. The Transit Commission says it might be operating a little slower.
We know there are areas of the city that are quite hilly, and sometimes that means that if buses stop, it's hard for them to get started again. So what we may have to do is eliminate some of the stops on those hilly routes.
He says a possibility of some closures should be anticipated as well, like Line 3 in Scarborough.
If we do need to close it down, we'll let everyone know, and we'll do a full bus replacement.
And while we can expect a bit of everything tomorrow, Phillips says temperatures will stay pretty mild across the GTA.
It's going to essentially be over by late afternoon, early evening. We could see some freezing drizzle into the wee hours.
Now, that weather advisory is in effect for tomorrow, as we just heard, and we can already feel a little bit of those strong winds kicking in already. I mean, my eyes are watering. But as for tomorrow, it means slippery roads and slippery sidewalks potentially. So if you're planning on hitting the road as you commute to work, just drive cautiously and slowly, as we've heard many warning us for tomorrow. And if you don't need to go out tomorrow, well, just stay in. Kelda?
Yeah, that's good advice. Thanks so much, Dahlia. That's our Dahlia Ashry live for us tonight. Now, with the storm hitting tomorrow, the city's new snow clearing fleet will be put to its first real test. Now, last year, Toronto made the decision to award 9 of 11 snow clearing contracts to one company. Rival contractors have been raising questions about whether that company would have enough equipment to pull it off. But as Ali Chiasson explains, the city is standing by its decision.
We're in for some fresh powder. The city's snow clearing contract, that's pretty fresh too. Thursday's snowstorm will be their biggest test. Is the mayor concerned?
No.
Even though the city sent notices to the Snow TO Corporation flagging they missed their November deadline for proof of mechanical fitness, equipment calibration, signage requirements, and having GPS systems on all of their equipment.
I'm sure our officials would be happy to answer any question of any journalist or anybody else about what letter was sent to who, and you'll see it's all just part of management.
All right. Let's ask the officials.
We are very satisfied with the activations that have occurred and the contractor's capacity to fulfill their service requirements.
The city says since the notice of compliance was sent in November, the contractors have delivered the vehicles. Some may be cement trucks with blades on them, but they insist the fleet is complete. The GPS systems are still a work in progress.
We have I think about 75% of all the vehicles have all of their GPS in place. We are using some manual procedures to fill in for the others. The rest of the equipment will be completely accessible on GPS within the next 7 to 10 days.
So this makes the Plow TO map, which tracks where the plows are and when, less reliable.
If you're a resident and you say, there's no evidence on Plow TO that contractor is anywhere near my street. Well, right now, the city will, I don't even know what the city would say, because they'd say, well, they haven't put their GPSs on their machines.
Councillor Josh Matlow was uncomfortable with the idea of giving one company a $900 million contract when snow removal used to be divided among several other contractors. Some had been doing the work for decades.
What council did was they just voted blindly on a contract that I didn't find convincing, and now we are seeing what happens when you vote for something without reading the details.
We will see what happens tomorrow.
It's not supposed to be the sort of Armageddon snowfall we had last year, but it's supposed to be significant enough that it will be a good test. But I think we're ready.
So the city is characterizing this as growing pains, and they do learn a lot after each snowstorm about how to improve snow removal operations. I think luckily for everyone, though, tomorrow's snowstorm isn't tracking to be like a snowmageddon of sorts. Ali Chiasson, CBC News, Toronto.
All right, let's go to meteorologist Colette Kennedy now for a first look at what's to come. And Colette, lots going on as we prepare ourselves for this big storm.
This is a fluid situation. I mean, in the sense of still looking at some of the warnings, watches, advisories, things could change in terms of more being added. But freezing rain warning, really important. Ice pellets or freezing rain, that potential in all these areas you see here. So London kind of in the middle of it, but it stretches over towards Hamilton, even back, not in the warning, but potentially back here towards Sarnia, you have that risk, up towards Owen Sound. So a large area where we could see some accretion, so some buildup of ice. Ice pellets means it freezes before it reaches the ground, but freezing rain, it freezes on contact, and that's when it can build up. Elsewhere, we're looking at snowfall warnings, the areas in white, and for the city, 10-15 centimeters, but further east and a bit north, there are going to be pockets likely looking at 15 to 25 centimeters or more, and weather advisories because of the bad travel conditions and the windy conditions, and then also where we had kind of bookending it with some of the weather statements there, just letting you know what's coming. And part of the reason for the mixed precipitation we're likely going to see is this temperature profile, with our temperatures coming up towards morning and getting very close to, if not at, freezing. So at times, especially close to the lakeshore, but not just there, it may mix in with rain for the GTA. Certainly more of a rain story for southwestern Ontario. There's that pocket in that window early tomorrow morning to about mid or late morning for the greatest chance of getting into the freezing rain, and mid-morning into the afternoon, that snow development and pushing through the GTA. We'll look at the accumulations when I come back and those snowfall rates too.
All right, thanks so much, Colette. Mayor John Tory's new housing plan is moving ahead. His proposal to build nearly 300,000 homes in Toronto over the next decade passed a city council vote this evening. Now, the plan, which aims to help tackle the city's affordability crisis, includes major changes to zoning bylaws, including legalizing rooming houses. Lorena Redekop has the details.
It's the mayor's plan to add more housing across the city, including multi-tenant, affordable, and student housing.
It's been described as bold. It's been described as aggressive. I don't think it is necessarily, but I think the people know that it is necessary.
He acknowledged the target of 285,000 homes over 10 years may not be enough, given immigration projections. Some of the mayor's usual allies aren't in favor, especially given that the province is cutting developer fees coming into city coffers.
Well, I think the overall proposal is to socialize housing in this city. And what I mean by that is either directly or indirectly, the existing residents are going to pay more to help make housing more affordable for future residents, that doesn't always sit well.
This plan would also permit rooming houses across the city. Now they're only allowed in certain neighborhoods. It's a huge switch, noted by some longtime councillors.
I'm anticipating from the comments that we're about to do something I've been hoping for 20 years.
I'll be honest with you, I have tried 12 times to get to this vote over the course of the last 14 years.
Some councillors pointed to rooming house fires and that regulating them will improve safety.
All the complaints I'm getting are all the illegal ones, which is very difficult. And the legal ones, I haven't had any complaints at all.
But the city's housing report coming in a few months is one that could pass, with Mayor John Tory having only 1/3 support. The province's new Bill 39 will be fully in effect then, granting him strong mayor powers. It's something 15 councillors opposed in a letter to the province.
You know who talks to me about Bill 39? Nobody. They talk to me about housing, they talk to me about community safety. Nobody talks to me about it. Nobody.
But even one of the councillors who didn't sign the letter against it says it's a big issue.
Oh, I think people will care when a development is approved and people turn around and say, well, who voted for this? And it turns out it wasn't the majority of council.
In the end, these motions easily passed with a majority. Now it'll be up to city staff to come up with their recommendations on how to implement all of this. They've got a few months to do that. Lorenda Redekop, CBC News, Toronto.
Investigators are trying to determine the cause of a fire that ripped through a home on Grange Avenue in downtown Toronto early this morning. Several residents were displaced as a result, but as Greg Ross reports, thankfully, there were no injuries.
It was really bright in my room, so I got out of bed, looked out the window, and the house was just starting to catch on fire there.
Matt Scholes lives across the street from the house that went up in flames this morning. He says it started just after 5:30, and he captured this video on his phone.
I just couldn't believe my eyes. It was insane to see it start from, a relatively small fire to absolutely engulfing the entire house.
It didn't take long for it to start spreading to an attached home next door, a rooming house with several tenants, including this man.
The firemen broke our door, and then just say, get out of here, get out of here, get out of here.
Fire crews say they were able to get everyone out.
The occupants are safe, but there is structural damage.
The damage delayed the investigation as crews were not able to get inside.
Those two look like they're gone.
Milan Danko has lived on this street for 72 years. He says it's been decades since anyone has lived in the home where the fire started.
It's just been at least 30 years, maybe more.
Danko says a childhood friend once lived in the other house next door.
I used to play in the basement playing hockey with a friend about 60 years, 65 years ago.
The investigation into what caused this fire could take days. Fire investigators are considering a number of possibilities, including claims from a number of residents that say they have seen squatters living in the vacant house.
They have reported that to us, and we are going to relay that information to our fire investigators so that they can follow up on those observations.
Fire crews have now determined that both of these homes have to come down, but at this point they haven't been able to confirm whether or not there was anybody inside the vacant home at the time of the fire. So they're going to have to do this very meticulously, taking that house apart piece by piece as part of this investigation. Greg Ross, CBC News, Toronto.
The Ford government announcing a significant health update today. Some high-risk businesses will be required to have opioid antidotes and the training to use them by June.
I know only a small minority of opioid-related deaths occur in workplaces, but I'll be damned if we don't do our part in helping save lives. And with more than 300,000 businesses across Ontario, by the end of the decade, I want every employer in our province to have one of these kits, just like they do a defibrillator.
McNaughton says Ontario will give out free naloxone kits and training to small businesses that qualify for the program. Now, this comes after the province passed legislation last spring mandating that the kits be available in high-risk workplaces such as construction sites, bars, and restaurants. Last year, more than 2,800 people died from opioid-related causes in the province. For the first time ever, the average monthly cost of renting a home in Canada is above the $2,000 mark. At Urban Nation, the company behind the new report, says there's no end in sight to the record prices.
It's likely that we could see rents take a bit of a breather in 2023. But over the medium and longer term, with aggressive immigration targets and rental construction that's been stalling recently due to high costs, it's pretty clear that rents are going to continue to rise higher.
Rents in Canada grew by 12% year over year. Toronto doubled that pace with the second highest rents in the country, just behind Vancouver. The average price of a one-bedroom apartment in the city now stands at $2,532 a month, while a two-bedroom will cost you on average more than $3,300 per month. Welcome back. The defending World Cup champs have ended Morocco's Cinderella run. France scored early in the semifinal match today and didn't look back. Dale Manukduk was at a watch party today in Mississauga and has more on how soccer fans are reacting.
Looking out into the crowd at Petra restaurant in Mississauga, it's hard to believe Morocco lost.
Honestly, Morocco won in our hearts. Like, no African country ever made it this far, and I'm so proud.
No African or Arab nation had made it this far.
This is an incredible moment. We did it, yes!
Ali Alian just returned from Qatar. He says the tournament is still a win.
We had an amazing World Cup. I think all Moroccans should be very proud of their team for how far they've come. Regardless of the result today, we've got a bunch of guys that really have gone very far.
Those in attendance were grateful that Morocco and its supporters brought their support for Palestinians to the world stage. After the match, many breaking out into song.
This amazing team, which has brought us together, given us something finally to cheer about.
In Toronto, fans of France celebrating the chance to defend its 2018 crown.
Exciting for the final on Sunday. This is going to be a beautiful game for sure, whatever happens.
France will take on Argentina this Sunday for the 2022 World Cup title. Dale Manukduk, CBC News, Mississauga.
And this is a live look of the Toronto skyline tonight. Partly cloudy this evening, becoming mainly cloudy overnight as a storm system moves its way in. Currently, it is sitting at the freezing mark in the city. Let's go back to Colette now. And Colette, a number of warnings and advisories in effect as we brace for what's to come.
Now, this is a really massive storm system, but just the impact it's going to have on Ontario, it comes in different forms. So we have to contend with these various things. I was showing you some of the warnings and advisories and everything off the top of the show. Freezing rain, that area, fairly large area where we could have ice pellets or freezing rain and even a buildup of some ice. It's likely going to be kind of mixing back and forth. So we'll see how that plays out, but I'm going to show you the potential there. Heavy snowfall, we are looking, I'm not just talking about the snowfall amounts, but the snowfall rates. So coming down at 2-3 centimeters per hour, it makes it very difficult for the plows to keep up with that on clearing the roads. So poor roadways, we talked about the winter weather travel advisories, and then winds blowing the snow around, so low visibility. But also keep in mind, with ice accretion, strong winds, heavy wet snow, there could be that chance of bringing down some tree limbs and power lines. So power outages become a risk. Also, a caution, anyone, shoveling very heavy, wet snow can be potential health risk too. So I want everyone to be safe for all the various reasons of all the forms of what we're seeing come in. We've already had the stronger winds in southwestern Ontario, those winds ramping up overnight and tomorrow all the way into eastern Ontario. More in the form of rain for southwestern Ontario. That's why your snowfall accumulations aren't that significant. But look at this wide area that could be seeing this freezing rain overnight tonight and early tomorrow morning, even potentially mixing back and forth close to midday or close to the lunch hour. So yes, Goderich, but even up to Owen Sound, London, potentially over to St. Catharines, Hamilton, you have the possibility of getting into some freezing rain there, and even Burlington and Oakville. all of that potential there into the city. A mid-morning, we're going to see it coming in a mix near the lakeshore. Elsewhere, it's a heavy snow becoming heavier towards the lunch hour and into those afternoon hours with those snow rates. Eventually, it does taper down, and overnight, so because of that temperature profile kind of changing back into a mix of some drizzle with some wet flurries, and then we'll kick this out of here. Ice accretion, so that risk of seeing some of the more significant amounts from Hamilton stretching back to London or just north of. Snowfall amounts, some of the heavier amounts, even Oshawa or up towards Uxbridge, Markham, and then eastward. Some of those areas you may be seeing 15 to 25 centimeters. It's 10 to 15 centimeters I'm expecting for the city, and then as we go west from there, lesser amounts, and then you got to factor in these strong winds, which at times some of these gusts may actually be exceeding 80 kilometers an hour. So all that to come for your Thursday. Take it easy, everybody.
All right, good advice. Thanks so much, Colette. The next SpaceX rocket lifting off from California will be carrying a satellite that was partly developed in Canada to study the ebb and flow of the world's water.
Imagine an animation where I could show you not just like the output of some model that someone created, but actual real data that's saying, hey, look, I can tell you for any big river system in the world, I can tell you how much water is coming out of that right now.
The Surface Water and Ocean Topography satellite will allow scientists to see the water patterns around flooding and drought and how the water levels of rivers, lakes, and oceans are being impacted by global warming. Now, if everything goes well with the launch tomorrow, the SUV-sized satellite will produce research data within just several months. And that is our show for you tonight. Thank you so much for watching. Remember, you can get caught up anytime. Just head to cbc.ca/Toronto. Chris Glover has your next local newscast tomorrow at 6, and I will see you back here tomorrow night at 11. Have a great night, everyone, and stay safe out there.